First of all, I'd like to thank all the panelists for taking the valuable time in this time, and also want to thank the participants who have joined so far. I'm sure they'll be adding up. But as you know, that today's webinar is a CEO Club webinar. That our topic is from fear to action in times of crisis. As around the world, you take the measures that to protect their people from this virus. I think all business leaders have fired up their crisis management and contingency plans to tackle and cope with the current situation. Uh, we have all witnessed and I think experienced a fear of economic instability during this tough time. We were not ready for this thing. The CEO Club has taken an initiative, which is called CEO Club Management Initiative for business community to sustain during this current unexpected situation, which we were not ready and had no plans. So we will be doing a lot. The business community that we like to assist may need some assistance from a business organization like us, CEO Club in a private sector. We will support and cooperate with companies to survive and come back better way after this crisis is over, and hopefully it is over soon. CEO Club have a plan to have a crisis management initiative committee with the experts in different management and other skills. Through this initiative, the CEO Club will assist companies in all areas like management, educating, human resources, finance, funding, clients, and other areas to with providing a full support every way for all type of industries during this crisis and after the crisis is over. And today, this webinar is part of the series of events that CEO Club will bring together with influential leaders to share their insights on how CEOs and business leaders play a crucial role in building resilience and face all this crisis and unlock the new ways of thinking and working environment and share the strategies and the drive the action for to lead effectiveness through this current situation. CEOs and business leaders, as you know, have a crucial role in the environment and they play to helping the world to getting through this crisis. So let us hear from influential leaders we have today and their thoughts. So today I'd like to first welcome panelist His Excellency Marwala Sarkar, the Executive Chairman of Sharjah Investment and Development Authority, Shuruk. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'd like to welcome Mr. Massimo Falsuno, the CEO of Etihad Credit Insurance. Thank you very much for joining us today. Then Ms. Alexandra Timhoti, Executive Director of EFT Private Swiss Bank Dubai office. Thank you very much for joining us today. And lastly, our moderator for today, Mr. James Matthew, the CEO and Managing Partner for UHY James Chartered Accountants, that who will be moderating, like I say, today's session. So we all are looking forward for everybody's input. And thank you very much to I hand over to Mr. James from now onward. Thank you very much for all.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Mr. Tariq, for this introductory remarks. I'm extremely pleased to be moderating this session. I'm very pleased to be part of the CEO Club in organizing this sort of events for the betterment of our members. I think this is the third webinar organized by, I think third or the fourth webinar organized by the CEO Club. It's a very active club. I've been part of the club for the last 3-4 years, and I find it extremely useful. I am told that there are many non-members attending the session. I would urge some of the people to at least join and come and make use of the networking opportunities we have here. Once again, I would like to welcome all the three panelists. It's a very important topic we are going to cover on from fear to action in time of crisis, in the times of difficulty. So we know that we are in an uncertain world. We read that around 90 plus countries have approached IMF for help. We have almost every countries around the world are helping their companies, citizens to go through and tide up through this particular situations. Around 8 trillion is committed by IMF to help between them. And as I see that today, the situations have become $255 trillion is the gross, I mean, the total debt of the country, the whole world, which is around the 345%, which is all-time high, it's been told. So we know that all our business plans the companies have done, at some point in time, we see that it's become redundant, it is not moving forward because something has come in and hit us very badly, which many of the companies were not prepared, or most of the companies were not prepared for, because we all know what is risk register in organizations. We do that risk register. Sometimes, we tend to, not to take these sort of situation into consideration. And here is one example. I just read about Wimbledon, which is only perhaps one event which they were very cautious about it, and because of this pandemic, they had to postpone. So we know that the situations are not that great, but there is fear within us, but we need to come out of that fear. We need to put action plans, because as leaders, we need to be mindful about it. We need to action out. So to join the panel, I have three eminent panelists with us, and His Excellency Marwan bin Jassim Al Sarkar is the chairman of Shuruk. I would like to just briefly introduce him. One of Sharjah's most prominent leaders and a game changer for the Emirates' economic and investment growth. Driven by his mission to cement Sharjah's position as a city of the future, he is leading the transformation and development of Sharjah's emerging markets and sectors through initiatives and partnerships. An exceptional leader with a dynamic personality, His Excellency Marwan has spearheaded major infrastructure projects and key partnership at Shuruk that currently exceeds 10 billion dirhams. His Marwan was ranked as one of the 56 world's most powerful Arabs in 2019. So with this, I would like to welcome His Excellency Marwan, and we move on to the second panelist, Mr. Massimo. Is the CEO of Etihad Credit Insurance, a seasoned and dynamic leader in the financial industry. Massimo holds over 28 years of solid business experience in the private and public sector. He has constantly produced sustained revenues and EBITDA growth in both mature economies and fast-growing markets. Massimo held CEO and directorial position for multinational companies like ExxonMobil, Philip Morris International, Volkswagen Financial Services, Euler Homes, etc. In 2019, Massimo was ranked 13th as the Forbes most influential executive heading local company, in addition to the many awards and accolades he has received for industry expertise and age leadership skills. I'd like to welcome Mr. Massimo too. We have the third panelist, Alexandra. She's an executive director at EFG Bank. Alexandra has been providing investment advice for the last 19 years and has worked for the private banking division of Morgan Stanley and Barclays Wealth in London. Since 2011, she's been working closely with clients based in the GCC region. Alexandra proactively participates in several initiatives to assist women to gain financial independence and improve their financial knowledge. And Alexandra has previously participated in several conferences across the region, providing insights on the global economic outlook. With this, and welcome Alexandra, with this, we would have to go to the one general question, which has got two parts. I would want everyone to, one by one answer that. The question, first part is, please provide a brief understanding of the current economic conditions of the sector or the industry that you are in. And what, according to you, are the fears within the industry? Because we need to find out what are those fears, and then we move on. And I would now start with His Excellency Marwan, and then move on to Mr. Masim, and then Alexandra.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, James, and a special regards to our panelist, Mrs. Alexandra and Massimo. Good to catch up with the colleagues we know, and we would also like to thank the CEO Club for arranging such a good an important webinar, I would say. And we'd also like to thank people that have registered and whoever are with us today or are going to follow us in the coming time. I think we are going through an unprecedented timing here with what's happening within the world and not within the United Arab Emirates. Something that I don't think anybody can say that they were prepared for it, even though they've seen it in China. But I don't think anyone can say that we were prepared for such a thing, that you actually have a full lockdown. And this is something that countries have had a different plan. Every country chose to do different things. At the end of the day, we all decided that without a lockdown, nobody can go over it. And we are very thankful that we have a leadership within the United Arab Emirates that didn't want to take the risk and was very much prepared in the way of taking the highest precautions in stopping a pandemic to happen in the Emirates. And that's why today we see the health sector in the UAE is not really as exhausted as we see in other places around the globe. So this is something that we have to be thankful to the leadership here in the United Arab Emirates. Now, when we talk about what is happening, it has been almost 5 weeks that I've been working from home. And working from home, I think for a lot of people was not even an option. Maybe we used to work at home when we used to travel for vacations, but it was not normal for us to work for more than 2 or 3 or 4 weeks at home. But we noticed that working at home is not really as bad as what we thought. We might be much more productive than we ever have been. We've been connected with excellent infrastructure when we talk about internet, but also programs that have given us all of the reason why we can be much more productive even working at home. Now, businesses has been extremely affected, and especially businesses that went into a proper closure where sales are zero. However, expenses are there. You have to, and we in Shurooq, we are into different sectors. We have been investing in the past years in developing destinations, developing, I would say, resorts, developing, and went into different industries like sewage treatment plants, all the way to vertical farming, to mobility, to advertising. Many of those businesses that we are in has been affected because of the government law of closure. And we can say that it has been sort of a challenge to think when is going to be the day that we're going to open to start. But there's going to be a new normal. People are not going to be as they used to be. They're not going to hang out and rub shoulders as they used to do it. And we need to be prepared on when the time comes that we're going to be open, we are ready and prepared for that. And that's what is trying to do. We don't want to have another issue with more casualties, but we need to be prepared to make people feel that they're safe. And we've seen in the hospitality industries many good examples of how can you prepare and make people feel that they're much safer with the new I would say procedures. However, there are sectors that have been flourishing. I mean, there are sectors when it comes to delivery service, they're been flourishing when everybody is at home. We have an investment in a sewage treatment plant, and that's flourishing. We don't have any issues. We're complaining with the amount of sewage treated water that we need to treat every day. But there are not many of those sectors that have been positively, I would say, affected. But it made us think about what are we going to invest into in the future, and how can we adapt to make our destinations more virtual, and how can we continue serving our people. The most important thing, I think, is the ethical thing here. We hear a lot of companies talking about we're going to cut costs, we're going to reduce salaries, we're going to create a lot of changes in order for us to go over this challenge. However, we need to really think about the social impact. It's very important for us to think as human beings. We can't think just how can we just survive, but how can we survive in all. We our staff, our families, but also our companies. We need to make sure that we are all into it, and it's not a couple of employees that are into it. And this is something that there is a huge debate about it locally, but also internationally. So that's my point of view about what's happening. There are different scenarios that we need to live in. What we are studying today, what is going to happen after the opening? Is it going to be a full open? Is it going to be a gradual open? And all of those, for every scenario that is going to happen, we have a plan for it.
Thank you, Excellency. I think our business landscape will change. Work from home is going to be something new, norm tomorrow. And I would go on to Mr. Massimo, please.
Good afternoon. And firstly, I would like to thank the CEO Club Network for organizing this webinar. I think it's very important this period, as His Excellency Marwan Sakal said before, to have a dialogue and to talk to everybody and to share information, feelings, sentiments. It's quite very important in this period. And I think that, well, from the exporter's point of view, if you ask me, because this is what we monitor at Etihad Pre-Insurance, which is the export credit agency of the UAE, of course, there was exactly the first reaction was, what was the name of the webinar, the fear. Of course, it was absolutely normal. So the fear of what's going on, there is disruption in logistics, in movement, in having even the employees at the office. So, and of course, at the very beginning, there was a sort of search of the latest information available. Now, what I would like to do during this webinar now, especially at the beginning, to stick to the numbers which has been disclosed by IMF, which might be give an idea of what we should expect in the next, few months and possibly end of the year. So the first thing I would like to point out is the latest expectation of the GDP, global GDP for 2020, which is a contraction of 3%. Now, this is totally different, as you see, is 180 degrees flip change, reverse change compared to what was just a few months ago, because the IMF expected a growth of more or less the same, was a 3.3% GDP growth. So it's obvious that what happened in the last month and a half, it's something which is unexpected, it's something which is unprecedented, and we would say that is maybe a worse recession than the one that followed the global financial crisis of 2008. Because at that time, there was no limitation of movement of people, no limitation of logistics. And of course, so it was a completely different scenario. Despite that, it was a global recession. So we are heading inside that. So it is absolutely normal, I would say, to have fear, because it's something which is unexpected and it's something that we need to manage. Now, still looking at the IMF, if you, as a first reaction, I would say fear as a first reaction is absolutely normal. If you look at more in detail to their expectation, only a couple of countries seems not to record a negative GDP growth according to them. One is India and the other one is China. Apart from these two countries, all the others, we will record, according to the IMF economists, an impact on their GDP. So they will go into the negative side. Now, look at the exporter. So, and exactly what we are measuring, of course, the global GDP impacts the export because it's part of that. Now, the World Trade Organization made an estimation of a reduction of 13% up to 32% for this year. And of course, the export impacted might be all of them, many. However, we would say that there are some businesses, as His Excellency mentioned before, also in the export side, which traditionally they used to take orders remotely and to supply their products. And independently by the pandemic, they continue to serve and to operate. And this is exactly what we registered. And so it means that the first reaction was to have a fear of a situation which was unexpected. Immediately after, there was a reaction especially from some exporters, to adapt to the situation. And this is exactly what's happening. Now, if you look now specifically to the UAE, what's happening, we were coming from a very positive situation of 2019 in terms of export, and specifically the latest figures published by the Federal Statistic Authority and Competitiveness Authority mentioned that the non-oil related trade indexes increased last year approximately about 3%. So, and of course, this is different emirate by emirate, but in general, it was a very positive figure. Now, what we would expect for this year? Well, for sure, in terms of trade, which implies import, export, and re-export, we saw a very wise approach from the UAE government, which was to secure the supply, and especially the supply of some key important goods like food, medicines. So this was, I mean, something important which will keep the non-oil trade level less impacted than maybe in other countries where the government did not intervene. One thing, just a note, because we are approaching Ramadan, we can see, for instance, as you know, during this period, traditionally, there is a lot of need of rice. And as you can see from the latest information, the imports in the UAE of rice from Thailand, Vietnam, India, Pakistan has completely, fulfilled the needs expected for Ramadan. Firstly, because it started some months earlier, but then also because some specific categories of imports were secured. So the important thing at the beginning to move from a fear situation into a more accepting the situation and then reacting was to secure the supplies. And this is exactly what was done by the government, and I would say very effectively. So medicines and food were the key priorities. Now we are entering in a second phase, which is after this has been secured, the business has to restart. And I think that there is a lot of expectation on this. And I've already seen the government of Dubai and the government of Abu Dhabi already creating some guidelines for the reopening of some, especially retails and shopping and restaurants, so traditional activities in the UAE. So this gives also hope. That's why I like to say that in a very short time, just 4 or 5 weeks, we went through a very situation which was unexpected of fear into action. And of course, I see the government, I'm very happy to see the government leading this kind of reaction.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you so much for this insight. And I would come with some specific points on the export a little later. Can I move on to Ms. Alexandria, please?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Just to add on the previous speakers, I thank you very much for your insights. In terms of the financial sector, I have to admit that it was quite scary at the beginning, because even though it was actually, and it is, a healthcare crisis, everyone was really concerned about the health and the prospects in terms of the health of the financial industry for 2020 and 2021. However, the big difference between the financial crisis and the current crisis of coronavirus is that the banks are in much better shape. So we have seen some massive reserves. We've seen some announcements by especially the US banks that they were just reporting, because the earnings season recently started in the US. We've seen some massive amounts in the billions where the banks have kept aside as capital to increase the capital ratios to ensure that everything will be smooth this time. So this is a huge relief. I believe that the financial industry will actually, so I'm a bit of a contrarian, I think the financial industry will perform better than expected. because of the immense liquidity that is coming from the governments, and also because I believe into the resilience of the human nature. And I think once measures are lifted, initially gradually and later completely, I think we will be able to make up a lot of that lost time. And I think everyone is ready to work really hard and make things happen, because to reach the stage where we are now in terms of the health of our economies and in terms of the health of the global economy, it took so much hard work and actually a decade. So nobody wants to go back to the state where we were in 2011, 2012. And I think everyone is doing everything they can in order to ensure that we will have what is called in finance, in financial jargon, a U-shaped recovery rather than an L-shaped recovery, which actually is not even a recovery, just an L-shaped economic situation, so a bit of a stagnation. And with that, I would like to just remind everyone, because I'm sure everyone is hearing about these different scenarios in terms of economic recoveries, where we have the V shape. I mean, they're self-explanatory. The U shape, which could actually be a W shape, and the L shape. Our strategists and the economists in the bank, and I agree with them personally, believe that most probably we're going to have a U-shaped recovery, where the current quarter, I think we all agree that is going to be a bit of a write-off in terms of the economic activity. The next quarter, which is bringing us up to the end of September, we are looking at a stabilization readjustment period. Final quarter of 2020, we are seeing a recovery, and we're seeing some positive numbers coming through and being announced in terms of GDP growth, and a proper acceleration, and we see in first quarter of 2021. So not all doom and gloom, I would like to say.
Okay, thank you. I think personally, I also are favoring, looking for a U-shaped recovery, which is, I think, which is imminent. I think almost everybody is. We can't have a V. We cannot have an L there at the point in time. So let's hope. I will come back to you on. Although on one side you got the liquidity of the bank, on the other side you got the share prices. I would come back to you, Ms. Alexandra, on how I would just take some clarification on this at a later point in time. I will move on to His Excellency Marwan. I just want to ask you, pick your brain on the initiatives introduced by Shuruk to support the investor community to navigate through this. If you have some things which you've introduced, because across the world people have done it. So what is that you've done for your community, investor community, especially?
Thanks, James. I think it's not about Shuruk. It's more of, let's see it from an UAE government level, but then also Sharjah government level. Well, in Sharjah, in the United Arab Emirates, I think the biggest thing that the UAE government have done, which is basically from the federal bank, which is giving almost 120 billion dirhams worth of support. And this is, I think, one of the most important decisions to create security and to give people some ease of re-looking at their debt and re-looking at their commitments. And I think if this was not announced at the beginning, we would have been in an issue today. And I think whether we utilized it or not, it created an assurance for the business sector, for the banking sector, and for everyone working in the United Arab Emirates that the government is there supporting the banking sector that is basically holding the economy. The other thing that I would say within each of the 7 emirates in the United Arab Emirates, the governments had made it sure that it's very important for the governments to stand today with the business sector. So within the Sharjah government, we had 47 stimulus plan by the Executive Council that was approved. Whether it's exempting companies from fees, whether it's port duties, whether it's renewals, whether it's creating an open visa till the end of the year, whether it's supporting the SME sector or the food industry. And I think more than every emirate has tried to create much more than anyone had expected, just to create that relief. Because as we mentioned, as Alexandra mentioned, there was this fear factor at the beginning of this pandemic, and nobody knew what is going to happen and how are they going to sort it out. And when governments come and support it by creating those packages, and this is just a start. So maybe we heard it at the beginning of, I would say, March, but we are going to see if, and it all depends on the scenarios that I've mentioned earlier. If this continues till June, then there are going to be more packages, and we have governments that are very dynamic, that listens, that hears, that sits with the business sector to address those issues. My biggest concern here is how can we support the SMEs, the small and medium-sized businesses that can get over it, and I think this is what our government also looking at. How can we support those businesses, not by also exempting them only from fees, because they're depending on sales. So the sooner we open with precautions, the better it is for our economy, in my point of view.
I think excellent point, Your Excellency. I think just wanted to, for the listeners again, some of the people are still not knowing about what sort of plans the banks have put forward. I mean, people are still asking what is to be done. I think the people have to get back to their bankers. And I get a lot of good positive news from the people that they approach them, they ask for a few documents, they ask for a bank statement, they want to see, has COVID affected you badly? Just look at this, and they come back and give you clear deferment of loans for maybe April, May, and June. So many of them have taken advantage of it. I think this is a time when people have to try and see and go back to their banks and do it. Number two, on the SME sector, I think if you look at the fees, if you look at the DEDs, all the cost has come down, the rental holidays have come down. As the Excellency said, I think it is, we will have to wait for the market to open so that at least there is sales, and then they move forward on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think what we are going to see in the future, I don't mean the future, I mean today, there are sectors that will flourish and sectors that are going to be opened up for foreign investors. So sectors that we never thought that they are exciting sectors that will have a good return of investment. Because of COVID-19, these sectors are now thriving. And whether it's the healthcare sector or the food industry or the delivery services, many sectors are going to be seen as opportunity sectors for investors to look at.
Thank you, Excellency. We move on to Mr. Massimo. I just want to, because you are in the export, what are the guidelines, incentives that ECA has brought into effect to sustain? Because I'm sure that's too early for you, but then if you have some sort of incentives and guidelines you have brought in, please share that with us.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, well, the first one, as we saw, the government in the UAE was very active. It was, as His Excellency mentioned before, it was very active through monetary policy, so injecting liquidity in the banks. And as you correctly mentioned before, not everybody is aware about the opportunities that SMEs specifically might get still in the banks. So the first point I would recommend is to listen to the government support initiative and possibly learn more and understand how these initiatives can be activated to themselves. Secondly, another important recommendation I would give, especially to the SMEs, which were mentioned before as the most fragile in the situation, what should be to communicate constantly with their stakeholders. Now, which are the stakeholders? Firstly, the employees, because of course the employees now are at home and they might be scared, as we mentioned before, of their employment, of their activities. So it's clear that firstly, communication with their employees is very important. Secondly, to talk with the banks, as we mentioned before. There might be a rescheduling of loans payments. There might be better conditions applicable to some financing solutions. There might be a review of sometimes loan contracts completely, and maybe some debt modification, debt restructuring. So they might also, for instance, ask for additional credit lines. And this is the case, for instance, where we in ECI, we are trying to support exporters. I need to mention that we did a survey thanks to the Chamber of Commerce of Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sharjah, and Fujairah some months ago, and only 4% of the companies, so 96% of the companies, were still doing their business on cash payment, on cash basis. Now you understand, and actually mostly they understand, when there is a liquidity issue like the one that is globally in the market, independently by the individual central banks initiative they are doing, you understand how this put at fragility any business. Because of course, it becomes very difficult to keep the same demand or even to mitigate the demand losses where there is no liquidity. So they need to extend credit. So it is very important for them to start rethinking how they use their payment terms, their relationship with their stakeholders, including in these cases, their buyers of their products, extending credit, but of course, being protective in doing that. Another recommendation I would say is to project and manage their cash flow. Now, this is very important, especially for the SMEs, because the first problem they might have is exactly on the cash flow, because as His Excellency mentioned before, running costs are there, but the revenues is not there. So, for instance, I would recommend to agree payment extensions with suppliers, and here will be very important the payment credit history of these entities before the situation, agree on extension to repay bank loans, grant credit, as I said, to customers, minimize costs, so try to outsource some activities that they were usually traditionally doing, so maybe outsourcing to other entities which might leverage on better cost, protect the payments, of course, and these are another things that I would like to recommend. Another thing that we all experienced, it was the positive impact of digitalization. We are now connecting, we are doing this meeting now through an IT enhanced system, and even His Excellency before mentioned, you know, he enjoyed working remotely through this mechanism. I think all of us, we experienced this, Alexander as well. I think that we all leverage on using this remote mechanism. We do much more meetings. So for sure, this will change the way how we interact, but might change also our business plan. So for sure, looking in the future, actually how to enhance the digitalization within our business models. This is very important. Last but not least thing to do, especially to the CEOs, I would recommend to start making a two plan. One plan for the next 6-8 months, so till end of the year, what to do to restart, because the activity, many businesses have never stopped. Actually, some increased the businesses because of a higher demand or because they needed to support more. But it is important to plan from now till year end, and also to plan the 2021, because all of us, we aim at a U recovery of the economy, but we are the protagonists of that U recovery. We must do something in order to make it. It will not happen by itself. So we need to plan in 2021 exactly what are we targeting, which are the markets, which are the sectors, how to manage our stocks, the cash flows. These are the initiatives that we need to start thinking now in order to be sure that also for our business there will be a U recovery.
Thank you. I think you touched upon another very important point about the resolutions or the employee management. People have actually pressed the panic button, and they have actually started cutting down employees. Those people were with them for the last 10 years, 15 years. They walked the extra mile with them. At this point in time, they removed them. But the ministry was very clear with their regulations, which they said, you need to be mindful, because if you take 1,000 people out from the market, the social cost, social impact which is going to come onto the market is something which we need to see it. They have come down, and with some 3 or 4 guidelines, that this is they asking them to go on unpaid leave, asking them to utilize their leave, asking them to advance their annual leaves, and then you go on to the situation where you can cut down and see, and if you are not able to do, then you move on. So this is something which I just want to share with everybody to move on. Another thing is, yes, 6 to 8 months, this is something that cash, today the cash is king. You need to manage your resources. If you are unable to do it, tomorrow you will collapse like everybody else maybe. So this is that extra step somebody has to, that the leadership has to be there on the forefront. By 24/7, you have to be on the top of that one. How do you manage? Today, the collection of the cash is not the responsibility just of the finance guys. Sometimes at a certain level, you need to get into it and see, because the times are difficult. So with this, I just move on to Mrs. Alexandra. You are a banker. I would want to hear more about what sort of the policies, guidelines you have from the central bank. How are you seeing it?
In terms of yes, my area of expertise is more private banking, but obviously I follow the developments very closely when it comes to the SMEs and what the central bank has been announcing. And definitely they have been extremely active, announcing packages since the beginning of the pandemic and intensifying the support with a test program, the targeting financial assistance that was announced in the first huge package of 13 billion that was announced earlier this month. So this is exactly, is going straight to the SMEs and to the individuals to allow them to go through this very difficult period. So there is a lot happening in terms of the support from government entities. But what I wanted to add to the previous point is that the companies themselves, a lot of them do not have senior management that is very experienced in crisis management, because this is a new reality for everyone. And I have to admit that very few people have the luxury of I mean, it's not exactly a luxury, but you know what I mean, in the sense that of having individuals that have been through similar kinds of situations before. So I think it's crucial, if they cannot do it organically internally in the company, to find industry specialists that can help them, guide them, and in a way reinvent themselves in order to go through this difficult period. Because I think sometimes it's just really difficult when you're stuck and you're dealing with so many problems to take difficult strategic decisions. You need someone else to evaluate your business plans, your supply chain, everything, and give you some advice. And I think the CEO's Club has a very interesting panel of very high caliber industry professionals who can help business owners.
All right. Now that you are there on, I just want to ask you, what would be your best piece of advice in making on making the most of the recent stock market corrections? You talked about the liquidity, you talked about the banks who've done well. So just maybe overview about it, what's happening, because you tend to hear so many things around the world.
Yes, the stock market, it's been very interesting actually, and there is a huge disconnect in terms of what's happening in the US in the stock markets and what's happening in the rest of the world. So in the US, in several sectors, we have actually seen a V-shaped recovery, and we are at levels that are all-time highs and have actually exceeded the pre-pandemic levels. Just to give you an example of a couple of companies, if you go and you look Johnson & Johnson, the company who is at the helm of producing the vaccine against the coronavirus, as well as Amazon. And these companies have shot up massively and very quickly to levels that they were not seen before. And I think they will keep on going up, even though the valuation levels are quite scary and very expensive in terms of valuation, but there is a lot of momentum. Because as Marwan mentioned earlier, there are some sectors that will benefit dramatically from this. And one of them is tech, and another one is pharmaceuticals and biotechnology companies. So the S&P, because it's very heavy in pharmas and technology companies, has moved up very fast. On the other hand, the Nasdaq was quite defensive. It didn't drop in particular. It didn't drop a lot. There was nothing dramatic in the Nasdaq. But if we look at the FTSE 100, for example, in the UK, it's still very depressed levels. The same in Europe. Asia has recovered quite well, and we think it will recover. It will continue to recover. But I don't think we're going to see the low levels of March, the end of March, that we saw those really, really low levels. But I think there will be points, there will be a lot of volatility in the next couple of months. So there will be points to re-enter the market. But at this stage, I think people will have to be very careful in terms of where they invest in their cash. Because unfortunately, things have moved up very, very quickly. And not a lot of people have had the chance to participate in the rally. I mean, the S&P has moved up almost 20% from its low at the end of March, within less than a month. What our strategists believe and our economists, if we do experience the U-shaped recovery, the sectors that will benefit substantially are mainly companies that are helping organizations to move from their infrastructure, their hardware infrastructure to the cloud. This is a major sector. Pharmaceuticals, of course, where I think we will see a few. Pharmaceuticals has been one of these sectors that was very under-owned. Last year, very few people owned pharmaceuticals, because it's considered quite a boring sector. You know, it's quite a defensive sector, and people hold it mainly for the dividend payments. But now it has had a big run, and I think this run will continue until we have some solid results in terms of the treatments and in terms of the vaccine. And I think the best brains in the industry are working towards it. I'm very optimistic. There are a lot of indications that by the end of this year, we will have something very, very effective against the fight of the pandemic. We also like sectors like materials, consumer discretionary, and consumer staples. And obviously, for the time being, we want to avoid the energy sector and banks. Saying that, I think there are some very high quality names in there, which if the clients want deep value in their portfolios and they have a very long investment horizon, they can buy some of the top names in these industries, and they will definitely make a very good return within the next 18 months, I reckon.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that insight. And I have a couple of questions more to the panelists before. I don't know, Mr. Tariq, you're listening to. If there are some questions, we will definitely be picking up. I just wanted to ask, Excellency, what do you think the businesses must focus today? Although some of the points we have already covered it, but then if some of those things we have not already covered, if you could add on, what should we do at this point in time? If you are an owner, what would you do?
I think digitalization is key, and it depends usually on the sector you are in. but everything towards digitalization is key to succeed. And I think companies that are slow to react are going to fail and fail miserably. I recently saw how the digitalization within the UAE government has been set as a strategy. This COVID-19 made us accelerate it, I think, to the level that government entities today that were never dealing online are now had to deal online because this is something that they have to keep the continuity of business. However, there are many companies that are outdated when it comes to e-commerce, technology, and this is an opportunity for those companies to basically jump on the route of digitalization and invest first on their people, but then on the system they're using. As Massimo mentioned, we've been using this webinar and it's as good as sitting in a conference. Maybe it's even better because everybody's sitting in his own place. There is this new normal that is going to happen. Things are going to change. If companies are not going to change the way of how they do business, they are not going to succeed. Many industries that were depending on people coming to their shop fronts to buy their products will have to digitize. Many companies would have to think about creating chatbots and online services that they have never thought about because they were depending on people. So the COVID-19 is going to change the way of how we think, how we feel, how do we react, how we consume, and how we communicate. And I believe if we didn't take the action now, I don't think we can survive, even if the government supported us financially, even if the bank gave us the all of the time we need. If we don't move and change and digitalize, I don't think anyone can survive in this pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Excellency. I think, somebody wanted to, Alexander, you wanted to add something, or?
I would like to.
Marwan covered everything. Absolutely, I agree with him 100%.
101%. I agree completely. The point is, I want to quote one sentence from Charles Darwin, which he used to say, is not the stronger or the most intelligent species which survive, it's the one which mostly adapt to the new situation. And we need all to learn to adapt and quick. And digitalization is a way to adapt to this new way of communicating and doing business.
Absolutely. 2021, Dubai's the plan to go paperless by 2021. And we are exactly on time now because this is where it is getting pushed to. I just want to ask Excellency Marwan, in Europe, in America, when people work from home, we sit here and we said, no, it cannot happen in Dubai. It cannot happen in the UAE. We will have to physically go to the office. Now, as you said, this is a new norm. Now, going forward, do you get a feel that some of the companies will go back to this situation, 30%, 40% of their employees sitting at home? Do you see this practice coming into our?
There is something that is known, that if you get used to something for 30 days, it becomes the new normal for you. So it's very hard to go back to pre-COVID-19 compared to post-COVID-19. A lot of things going to change. I personally felt, at the beginning, it was a bit of a challenge, to talk to my colleagues in Shuruq, to communicate with them, have meetings through those technologies, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or whatever. But then it became so good that everyone is even more punctual when we use those programs. Everyone is more responsible and more focused than they were in a room, for example. And I think as the time we get used to things, because we're human beings, God gave us the ability to be agile and to adapt and to react. And that's why we survived hundreds and thousands of years. We're the only species that are actually surviving till today. Now, how do we live today is not how we used to live 1,400 years ago. It's totally different. Now we commute in a different way. We communicate in a different way. So God gave man the way of how can he take over and react very fast. And this is why we managed to be successful even when we are sitting at home. Projects are still progressing. We have projects that are under construction. They are a bit slower because of distancing that is requested by the governments. However, when we talk about the business, I don't believe that we will go back to how we used to work or deal with people on pre-COVID-19. Everything is going to change, and I think it's going to change for the better of every one of us. And I think whoever that wouldn't want to change 20 years ago when Dubai said let's do the e-government, now if they have not adapted, they are going to go out of business. It's similar to what happened to Blockbuster compared to Netflix. They are out of business. They are outdated, and nobody wants an outdated thing unless it's vintage, you know. And this is the future. We have to be so excited of how COVID-19 have created an opportunity for us. I would like to invest in this technology business because I think everybody is going to digitalize and everybody is going to move toward. If one message about the stock market, you know, when we look at how Tesla stock was a couple of months ago reaching 900, then dropping dramatically a couple of weeks ago, and now bouncing back to 700, is magnificent. But my message to a lot of people, you have to study every stock you're going to invest in and what makes it go down. And it's very important, not for anyone that doesn't know anything about the business to enter this, because he can burn a lot of money or she can burn a lot of money.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Mr. Massimo, I know this is, we don't have a crystal ball in any of our hands, but just wanted to ask you, what is the time frame you expect these things to settle down and we will have a takeoff? Because, today our economy is not just dependent on what we do here, it is dependent on the whole world. So what do you think a realistic scenario, like how many months? You said about 6 to 8 months, but so can I just get some more elaboration on that?
Well, to be honest, I heard a lot of estimates from corporates, economists, consultants. I don't trust any of them due to the fact that any model which they've created to predict the future development of the economy were based on statistical data, and this is a discontinuity point because this is a systemic global recession and impacting most of the sectors. So it's very complicated to predict. What I can say is this. Alexandra before clearly mentioned there might be, we learned from the past three kind of different situations. The V way, the V curve, which means that we recover immediately. The U curve, which might take in between 3 to 6 months to revamp, and the L shape, which means that approximately might be something like more than 1 year time. I think that it will depend. It will depend on a lot of things. I would say that the recovery has already started, and has already started since I would say after the first 3-4 weeks of confusion, and so I would say that in the next 6-8 months we will continue this adjustment to the new normal, which means to strengthen the business models, considering that the next year in 2021 the way to do business is totally different than the way how we were doing business before. So we will have still 6-8 months of volatility. We will have this volatility for sure we see in the stock market already now. It will continue for sure in the same. We will see that end of the year, as you know, corporates used to disclose their financials, most of them end of the year, some of them in April. So for sure they will report negative numbers, but this will be something which is already expected. So what will happen is after this situation, which presumably will be starting from 1 year from now, so in March, April. And on this, I see a big opportunity for the UAE to being really a leading country to steer the reconstruction of the economy with the opportunity of the Expo to be done in 2021. Because I would say that most of the business will start picking up in 2021. IMF make an estimation. They estimate an increase of a GDP after the loss of 3% of this year of 5.8%. For sure, if there will be this increase, will not be in the first part of the year, but it will be in the second part of the 2021. So again, I would say we need now to see this still 6-8 months of volatility and hope to have the 2021, not first quarter, but from the second quarter onward, start picking up the economy, and the rebounds can be very, very fast for some businesses and for those who will be prepared to do it.
Okay. I think before we open some questions, there are some good questions coming up. I just want to hear from Mrs. Alexandra and as well as His Excellency to just see if you have got any different thoughts on the timelines, what he was mentioning.
Yes, I think a lot of it has to do also with the announcements by the large pharmas and the biotech companies and all the joint ventures they've announced in terms of the vaccine or the treatment about the virus. Because if we do find the vaccine by Q3 next year and all the measures are lifted, I think it's a complete game changer and things will move much faster than if we don't have any positive news this year in terms of the healthcare developments. So I'm quite optimistic that it will happen. As I said earlier, some of the biggest pharmacies in the world are working feverishly to get the vaccine out and some very promising drugs. But the stock market, interestingly, has not moved on the back of economic data. And a lot of the bad news, a lot of the negatives are already priced in for this quarter. They're mostly following the developments on the COVID-19. And the major volatility has come either by the substantial drops in the oil price or negative surprises by some of the big tech companies or medium-sized tech companies. Because there are a lot of expectations in that sector. And when a company disappoints, and because, as I said, the capitalization of these companies has increased dramatically in the past couple of years, whenever there is negative news coming out of that sector, then the indices also drop substantially. Like we saw that a couple of days ago when the markets dropped 3% across the board. So it's interesting. Yeah, the stock market seemed to be quite resilient. They're just browsing through, not even blinking by a lot of negative economic data. Saying that, I believe there will be a lot of volatility. But I think the worst is over in the stock market. We will not see it's not likely to see the lows of March. Don't think we're going to go to that level. We'll be range bound probably for a few more months. And as we are approaching the US election, which I think will be a major catalyst also, the markets are expecting that Trump will win. So let's see what's going to happen on that front as well.
Okay, all right. Your Excellency, your thoughts on?
Well, I'm a very positive person. I would say one thing that's very important. COVID-19 is not fearful as we think it is, and what we've seen, governments and hospitals were not prepared, and this is the biggest issue. I think we are now much more prepared than we were ever before. With a lot of distancing and all of those new procedures, we're never going to go back on how we were when this started globally. I can't talk about China because information from China I don't really trust very much, but I trust the information I receive from Europe and from America and from hometown here, United Arab Emirates. What I think is now all of the governments around the globe are more prepared than ever. They have set precautions. COVID-19 is not something that we cannot get over it. COVID-19 requests us to wash our hands, to keep distance, to do a lot of things that every person can do it. It's not something like that everybody is going to die out of it. Our hospitals were not prepared. I'm talking about our hospital internationally were not prepared for something like this and for that many casualties. And people were not respecting what the government was saying. So they took the risk. And that's why a lot of them had this issue. I don't think we are going to get over COVID-19 soon. I think it's going to stay for another couple of years. I think we are going to change our whole habits in the future. We're going to sit much further than we ever used to sit. We're going to wash our hands much more than we ever used to wash our hands. We are going to think about everything before. We will travel less because of technology. We don't want to mingle and sit very close to a lot of people. So it's going to have an impact. The vaccination is going to come whether we like it or not. A lot of companies are going to make money, or a lot of governments are going to make money. It's not going to be happening very soon. I think, in my personal opinion, we are going to have an ease of lockdowns. So as we see, shopping malls are going to open, but they're going to put a restriction. Maybe 6 months down the line, they'll be open much more. But then after several times, we are going to go back to the new normal. But I would say is that we have to create an assurance for people not to have that fear, but also to be more cautious about what they have to learn from what is happening. All of the businesses are going to change, and I think whether we like it or we don't. But the good thing is COVID-19 doesn't kill anyone. We need to take care of the old people, and we need to take care more about them and be more cautious about the thing that we have learned from the COVID-19.
All right. I think thank you so much. Just wanted to touch upon a few questions which has come in. Ali Ankishe, I don't know whether I pronounced the name properly, but how long the government will support the stimulus package? This is, I don't know whether we will be in a position to answer this, but if anyone wants to pick it up, you can answer it. Yeah.
I think as I'm a government employee, I think the UAE government has said till the end of the year. They said at the beginning for 3 months, but then I think it all depends on how are we going to open up. But I don't think it's going to be only 3 months. I personally think it will be till the end of the year. But the governments also have their budgets, so they also have to survive in this pandemic. But I think the most important thing is companies have to be dynamic and try to stop any unneeded expenses and move towards focusing on how can they make money out of this pandemic.
Yeah, this is an observation from someone. This is Kyriakos Kofinas. She said, says that to estimate till the end of the year for 2021, need first to plan the next 90 days. Yeah. Someone is asking where we can find the relaxation on finance done by banking sector for SMEs.
Every department is different. If he's talking about the United Arab Emirates, I can answer, but if the world, I'm not really sure. But if it's the UAE, every government has their own SME programs, so they can talk to every. So if he's in Sharjah, he can go to Ruwad, for example, and the economic department. They will show him all of the support. If it's with the bank, he will go directly to his bank that he's dealing with.
Someone is asking, what is the future of the education industry? I don't know whether somebody wants to pick it up. Education industry.
In what terms?
I think
sense of when the schools are going to open, or in the sense of from a profit point of view, because there are schools that are for non-profit, and there are schools that are run as businesses. So if there was a bit more clarification, maybe we could assist.
Yeah. They just asked what about the education sector. That's it, you know. So I believe it is how.
James,
Yeah.
maybe I think he's concerned because his children are at home.
For too long.
I think you know, beginning of this e-learning thing, it was a nightmare, my friend. It was, you know, if you have more than one kid, you have like 2 or 3 at the same time. It was, but today, after I say 4 or 5 weeks, I think things are normal. Still, there is a challenge if you have more than one kid, but I think the school industry, I think they will now look at it in a different way, because I don't think they were that much prepared for it, but they were better than other countries. I think they had a lot of teachers had to invest more on those programs, and they're human beings, so they will get over it very soon. And I think the next course is going to be much easier and easier for those schools.
Someone is asking, Haresh Ishrani is asking, what will happen to real estate market if most of them working from home after COVID-19, post COVID-19?
No, I was reading an article recently that some of the hotels have transformed their rooms into offices. So you can rent a room, but not for a whole day, just for some time. So it becomes your new office, which I thought it's a nice idea. So there is this, yeah, there is a lot of this creative, because sometimes you're in an apartment and you have maybe 3 kids, but your apartment is for sleeping. You know, you never intended to work in an apartment and to do a lot of things in an apartment. So if hotels can react also, different industries are going to be dynamic to serve what is coming up.
And this is a question to Mr. Marwan. As the economy gets better, what investment will you focus on?
I was saying that, you know, this food industry, vertical farming, all of those, you know, everybody had this fear. I'm not sure if you noticed people running around in supermarkets trying to buy stuff, whether it's vegetables, food, because food to survive, you know. But they didn't know. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, said, "Don't worry, everything is going to be available." And this was a very good message. But still, people had this unknown about are we going to get what we want to have. But I think this food industry, the food security, is a huge opportunity for a lot of investors to think about it. So I encourage. We are looking into it, Shuruq, as an investment company, but we are also looking at different industry. Logistics is very big. I think delivery services, if you talk to other than Amazon and Noon, a lot of other online practices will give you 1 week or 10 days. So it's a lot of delay. So there is a lot of opportunity in the delivery services. And creating those, what you call it, dark kitchens, I think is another industry that people can look into it.
Haresh Ishrani, as central bank has support banks and to support their clients, but there is no clarity from any bank or authority how they going to support SMEs. I think, Harish, as long as your case is not a pre-COVID case, I think you will have to approach the bank, because I had some discussions with some of the banks. They said there have been more pre-COVID cases which they are applying for the COVID reliefs. You know, if they have been defaulting maybe 6 months or 8 months or 9 months before the COVID came in, you know, the banks are obviously not going to look at. But if there is a genuine case, I think your bankers are the best people to help you out. Go to them, be transparent with them. I think that is there. They will help you out. I've seen good results. So I do not know whether if any banks would, deny this such opportunity for you. Anybody would like to add up anything?
I think you covered it properly, I think, James.
How do you think autonomy and automation among the trends may accelerate the next day, and also companies in those sectors? So I think you touched upon the digital and the sort of thing. This is what exactly it is.
Yes, autonomy is one of the sectors within the fourth industrial revolution that I think We have here in Sharjah an exciting project called the Sharjah Research and Technology and Innovation Park, where a lot of new technologies have been tested. And vehicle autonomy is picking up. We are still not in level 5, but I think we've seen a lot of, I'm not sure if you've seen a lot of programs in America where delivery is done by fully autonomous vehicles without unmanned, I would say, or drones even. I think this is something that is going to be something in the future. It always depends on the regulations. But yes, I think investing in companies and those is big. And I think Tesla is one of the biggest players when it comes to full autonomy vehicles.
Is government going to announce some instructions to landlord to support all the residents as well as business tenants? Mr. Massimo, you want to speak up?
There were some recommendations from the government to all the stakeholders in the economy in this period to ease all the the loans, the rents, so to get some flexibility. So I'm not sure that there will be something imposed, but for sure the good sense, as Marwan said at the beginning, we need to be also ethical for the new economy, the new way how we will work all together in the next new normal. And this is to be ethical. So for sure, some elasticity that should be there in order to make everybody capable to manage the situation, but not sure that something will be imposed.
All right. So I think we have more or less addressed all those relevant questions. There are so many other questions which have come in. Yes, you have come in.
No, I have a question for you. I think you've been asking questions with everybody. I want to know what is your crystal ball says that you've been playing with numbers for decades here in UAE. You know this local economy very good. And what do you think that as a private sector or businesses should do in the current situation?
I was never expecting this question, but then thank you, Mr. Tariq, for this question. I think we have to accept the fact that there are 350,000 plus small and medium-sized companies in the UAE. The VAT, the compliance, there are so many things which came in the UAE. 5 years back, if you wanted to open up a bank account, it was so easy. You didn't have to do anything. You could just give your signature on that. There's no KYC, nothing. Today, the regulations have changed. There are economic substance regulations. There are so many things which we have come in the UAE. The compliance have gone up on one side. So that is actually including the VAT is also a compliance. There were people who were making invoices. They were doing discounting of checks. And there were so many things which was happening in the lending sectors in the banks. I'm sure some of you would know it. After the VAT came in, I think there is a financial discipline which is coming. Now, what is the result of that one? There were many companies who could not cope with the situations. They moved out. Now, I just would want to disregard COVID for the time being because these are unexpected things, I wouldn't want to touch upon. I will touch upon when this is likely to get out of it, I will touch upon. But then I'm generally talking about the SME sector. So the situation was that, the 2018 onwards, the VAT came in, the compliance came in, the people were maintaining proper books of accounts. Pre-VAT, I was told that less than 50% of the people maintain proper books of accounts. Lack of financial knowledge. They think that what money in my bank account is my profit. And they have no discipline in it. There have been so many other cases by which they were not knowing what was happening in the market. So there was a situation which, I have no hesitation in telling, even before the COVID, we were going through a slowdown. Because if you look at 99, we had a recession. 2008, we had a recession. 15, we had a recession. In every 6, 7, 8 years' time, we had one way or the other, we got hit very badly on it. And this is a sector on real estate. If you look at the real estate sector, which is 30%, 35% down in the market, which has come in, you're talking about 9 million square meters of commercial office space in the UAE. You got around 15-20% vacancy there. Now, if you stop, all the businesses leave, then there will be implications for that one. So there are so many things which is happening. But what I get to see is moving forward. Leave aside the COVID. Moving forward, you have the DHS regulations, which just came in a few days back. The hospitals and healthcare clinics, their payments from the insurance company was delayed for 3 months, 4 months, and 5 months. That was hitting all the hospitals very, very badly. Now, the DHS regulation came on 31st of, I think, March. They said everybody has to clear their payment irrespective of whatever it is by 9th of April. It has come hard on the insurance companies, but it is a blessing in disguise for all the people who are they're trying to do everything level better. Now come to the COVID side. I think here the tests are done well. We have rising number of cases, but we tend to see that maybe in the next 3 months' time, we would see normalcy back to here. But unless the world around, unless the Europe market, unless the other market depending on us is not open, we will have our own, challenges on it. This is what my take on it.
Yeah, no. Thank you very much. Is there any other question from the participant that you have, Mr. James?
So, I think more or less I've covered all those questions now. It's 4:21 now. And I think maybe we can, I don't think there are, somebody's asking is recording is possible. That's okay.
We are recording this thing and we will share that recording with everyone.
So, I think it is fine from my end.
So can you maybe summarize, Mr. James, the session?
Yeah. I think I wanted to just say, one thing from Mr. Marwan's discussion, that is digitalization is something which is very important. Another point what I wanted to just say is, I just wanted to touch upon something like you have to be on the forefront 24/7 as a leader. Today, there are nothing written here. Everything, you need to borrow the ideas, you need to harvest those ideas, take your decision and action it. As a CEO, as a leadership, you need to do that particular thing. And I just also want to say that, in India, we have Amitabh Bachchan. I'm sure some of you would know. Amitabh Bachchan is the big B, the film actor. He collapsed in the year 2000 when he was almost on the verge of bankruptcy. And at that point in time, he acted in so many movies. He was so rich. And when he collapsed, he just swallowed his ego and he went and talked to the people. I am on the verge of collapse. I need job. I need to do this. And then that was the start of this man again. So just wanted to say today, this ideas can come not just from someone who has seen 4 recessions. The ideas can come from someone, maybe he's 60-year-old. No, it could be somebody who is maybe a new technology guy who can come in. So today, the firms and organizations, they got a crisis team. They also have suggestions. I don't know, Emirates Airlines, for example, they have an excellent suggestion scheme. They reward the people who come up with the best suggestions during the year. So the companies have to go back and see how the employees can add value to it. Because you sit in the in the corner office, you may not sometimes get the full perception about the whole thing. So that is something which we need to look at. And I think with this and the new normal, this is the new normal. Going to be working from home, working from someone was saying the electronic online. They have never sold televisions. Televisions are somebody has to touch, feel, and then buy it. So he said, the owner of a shop, he said 42,000 dirhams worth television he bought online. So the things are changing. The way we are, we said in America, we are doing online. Here, we will not do online. We have the only entertainment is going to the mall and spending some time there. So that will not happen. But you see what is happening today. So with this, I just would like to thank all the panelists, Excellency Marwan, Mr. Massimo, Mrs.
Thank you.
Alexandria, for being a part of this panel. I hope it was from the messages which is coming here today is very informative. Thank you for giving those insights into it. And I would like to thank Mr. Tariq once again for giving us this opportunity to present on behalf of the CEO Club. And then just over to you, Mr. Tariq.
Okay, well, thank you. On behalf of CEO Club, I'd like to also thank His Excellency Mr. Marwan and Mr. Massimo and Ms. Alexandra and also Mr. James Matthew. I think it was a good session. It was very informative, and I think with the views coming from different industries, I think gives a better idea and a very valuable input that we all have taken as a participant. And I think, I don't know you remember, I always say in my CEO Club, I say that this is the time that we learn from past to correct our present for better future. So this is a wake-up call for all of us. We should go back to our drawing board, improve ourselves and come back in the market in a much better way, and from a private sector, from every sector, and make this UAE more stronger. And I think this is the time is very important that we all work as a team. Doesn't matter which industry we belong to, that we have to assist. We have to come forward to each other. We have to support and cooperate with each other. And I think there was one very important thing that was mentioned in this session was that, leadership is very important. We have a great leadership in UAE and also in private sector. I think we don't need bosses now. We need leaders. And this is what I think we all have to go back and think, that we come as a very positive and productive leader into our organization to produce more. And I think, by mentioning that we're going through online digitization, and I think, what we are doing today, this current crisis are expedited everything, that we start using all those things, but we were planned to use maybe next year or following year. So I think the way I do agree that the way when we come back to the normal business environment, our way of operating our business, the way we react or act according to or on behalf of companies is going to be very different. And I think I hope everybody comes very positive way. And I like to thank each one of you for their valuable time. I like to thank the participants for their valuable time to joining us, and we as a CEO Club launch this crisis management initiative, and we will be conducting a series of webinar on this subject with different industry leaders. And also we are conducting very different webinar, which I cannot share with you, but I can guarantee you, once I announce that, you will never see that type of webinar anywhere in the world. So we are working on it, and you will hear from us. So why I'm mentioning that CEO Club always like to do something creative and something original and something different. So I like to thank each and everyone. And I think these webinars, I saw one comment in this chat box that this is a good way of webinar that we be sitting in the event in the first row. So I think, we all are, very thankful to everybody. So again, I thank and I hope that we stay safe and stay home. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Again,